Hey guys, this is Red Pole Q here, and as usual, I have
McConnell.
And if you listened into the previous discussion, you will already be familiar with
Mr. Right. Good evening.
And today we are going to talk about some cool stuff. We're going to talk about how you can use online game. I'm not a big fan of online game, but I do think there are a few situations in which it's worth doing. So we're going to talk about online game, and then we're going to talk about the other side of online game, which is not online game. We're going to talk about cold approach and some of the issues that guys have with doing them, basically. Yeah. So that's what we're going to get into.
This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, and 100% reason to remember the name.
So let's talk about let's talk about the online dating thing first. So who has actually Mr. Wright has some experience with online dating.
Please
Please do tell.
Well, just recently in Taiwan, I met a virgin. Virgin?
Virgin.
I'm pretty sure they're called virgins. No. Well,
That's the
a
other.
version.
That's another. Usually, we're much more familiar with another kind of bird, a dirty bird. But every now and then, someone might come across a virgin bird.
I've actually met two virgins here.
Oh.
The first one was the Mormon.
Oh, the
girl.
Mormon,
Remember
yeah.
that Mormon girl? Yeah, she.
Well, I didn't
she-
actually meet her.
Yeah, well, she met you. Not in the most ideal circumstances, but I managed to actually get her home just as Mr. Red Pole Q here was laying into a girl of his, a particularly loud screamer, and let's just say she was none too pleased about the situation that was occurring.
Well, you
So,
know.
That pretty much crushed my chances, but I don't think they were very good chances to begin with. Anyway, so. However, the second virgin.
I mean, you know, with Golden Fox, when he had a girl come over, actually, I think it's happened twice that he had girls over at the old apartment, and you know, it was very quiet in the bedrooms, and you know, he was able to make it happen. So I think in their particular case, I think they were more like, oh, this is the right place, whereas I think the Mormon girl was more like, this is the wrong place. Because even before you brought her up, you were already having problems with her, right?
Yeah. Well, she was pretty lame to begin with. She was definitely attractive.
Well, you were reading Warhammer lore when you took her to dinner
Yeah, well, she was pretty boring.
instead of talking to her.
No, I was trying to talk to her, and just got bored, I guess. And then it was really weird. I told you about this. She asked me a question, and so I put down my phone and started answering her. Then she stood up and walked out the restaurant. It's really bizarre.
This was after you bounced her here?
After we left.
Oh, okay.
we left
Well, you should
here.
talk about when you brought her to the front of the house.
Oh, when I brought her to the front of the house, she was very against coming up, even temporarily, even momentarily, even just like she was unhappy about even standing in front of my apartment. So I was not that.
You told me about some of her objections. They were pretty funny, from what I remember.
Oh, what were her objections? Like her parents said she should never go to a guy's house, which I guess is good advice if you're like 12. But you know, if you're a functional adult, it seems kind of weird to still be following that.
Maybe they wanted her to only do it in the back of cars or in hotels.
Yeah, I guess that makes more sense.
God can't see you there.
Yeah. Away from God's prying eyes.
So online dating. So you that was the first virgin that you met on the
Yeah.
internet.
So
Notice
she-
one of the hazards of already it's very clear that this is one of the hazards of meeting girls on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, if you meet girls on the internet and they happen to somehow be attractive, you should probably expect that they'll have some kind of problem. Like
A broken leg?
Yeah, well, actually, I'd say that's a very minor problem, really. But I'd say very attractive girls don't need to be on the internet to meet guys.
Unless there's something wrong with them.
Unless there's something wrong with them, or if they happen to be in some kind of position where they can't interact with the kind of guys that they want to be interacting with. But I'd say that's probably rather rare. I mean, maybe in America it's a bit more common, or maybe in mainland China it's a bit more common.
Because they're surrounded by peasants all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. Like it's really difficult to actually meet a quality guy, but. In a large metropolitan city like Taipei or Seoul or
Bangkok,
Tokyo,
Osaka,
these
Hong Kong.
attractive girls meet guys every day. Like they literally have to beat off guys as they walk down the street. Not in a good way. Not in a way that makes the guys happy.
But yeah, so
this but the second version actually wanted to lose it, but has just never had the opportunity to meet a guy who she thought she could lose it with.
Right, which is kind of ironic because basically she did it with you on the first, the first time you met her, right?
Yeah, first off day one.
And her main complaint about Korean guys is that they're too horny.
Yes.
And she couldn't find anyone to lose it with. So.
Well, she's Korean, but her excuse for that was that she felt she was too young at that time to lose it, and she's only had one Korean boyfriend.
Oh, I see. So so they were too horny for her age.
Yeah. Well, I think she just means they're just too horny all the time.
That's pretty funny.
Pretty true.
That she gave up all this resistance and then she meets you off the internet. How long did you talk to her before she met up with you?
Maybe. Oh, I talked to her a while. Maybe like a couple days.
That's not a while. This guy just took months before he got the day 2 with his girl.
Oh yeah, but I mean that girl was objectively real quality. Like, yeah. Another hazard of online game is that these girls are able to rock the selfie magic and not always appear as you think they might appear.
Let's just say that if you want to be successful in an online game, it pays to not be too picky.
Yeah.
Tattoo has been pretty happy with his online game successes here in Taipei.
Well, well, actually, he wants to leave now, right?
Well, yeah, but it's not because of the girl situation. It isn't. Do you think it is?
I think it maybe a little bit is.
But he thinks but he's moving to Vietnam and he thinks the girls there are even worse. I mean, even.
No,
yeah.
well, I'd say he thinks the girls in Vietnam are better.
He thinks they're easier.
More his type.
Exactly, that's the point.
More his type equals easier.
Well, like
if easier is your type, then online game is for you.
Don't wish you were better. Wish it was easier.
Don't pray for a hard life. Pray for an easy victory.
Yeah. Don't listen to that, guys.
So I also, here in Taipei had a same day lay on the first meeting with a girl off of Tinder who was also 20.
Virgin?
No, very much not a virgin. She seemed to be on the Baskin Robbins Try 'Em All program. So
find all 31 flavors.
Yeah, but this actually ties in with one of the nice things about doing online game. The connection isn't obvious. Let me explain. So the next day, she invited me. Well, she kind of invited me. She told me about an event that was happening the next day. And that was like the first Hyatt pool party that I ever went to. So I heard about it from her. So if I hadn't closed her that day, I wouldn't have known and I wouldn't have gone to that.
What he's trying to
pool party.
say is if you don't do Tinder, you'll never have any success in life. You'll never go to good things.
Well, you know, I did meet.
You'll lose out on opportunities.
Well, I did meet HB boyfriend, HB German boyfriend at that event, and I also met our good friend who introduced me to HB. What's the best word to say it? HB undercover tits, because no one's ever seen them.
Ah, yeah, that's a good point. And you also met my personal.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, HB drunken club promoter.
So, you know, going to those parties really was a kickoff to a lot of the people that I know here. You know, when the girl that used to work at that restaurant Bottega Divina, I met her at that event. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of advantages from that perspective. And you actually have another story about someone starting a social circle from using Tinder.
That's true. So last year on Halloween, Red Bull, Hugh and I went to a Halloween party here, and we had a table with some mutual friends. So we went to the table, and we were just hanging out, and one of the girls at the table who I had never met before
Was keen.
Yeah. So she was talking to me, and she seemed quite keen to meet. So I got her contact information, and then I was trying to schedule her, and the next weekend she messaged me and said, "Oh, it's my birthday party this weekend. So why don't you come and hang out?" And so I'm like, okay, I've been to girls' birthdays before. Usually it's like a lot of girls, maybe like a couple guys they know from their social circle, and it'll be like a good chance to meet her friends and whatever.
Maybe upgrade.
Yeah. and so I said, okay, sure. So I went to meet her, and I met her at the metro station, and she said, okay, well, we're gonna go to KTV. And
KTV, for those of you who don't know, is karaoke, but in Chinese cultural places, it's called KTV for some reason.
Yeah. So we were gonna go to KTV, and I was like, okay, sure. So she leads me to the room at this famous, I guess, KTV.
So it was the two of you only at the
MRT.
Interesting.
Right. So I'm on the way up to the KTV. I asked her, I was like, oh, so who else? How many people are here? And she's like, oh, just a few of my friends, friends from school. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And I opened the door.
Right. What school? Meaning junior high school, or what are we talking here?
Yeah, she's a university student.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. She's one of those girls who got to skip 5 grades. So really, it's junior high school. But at the no, I'm just kidding. It's no, she's a normal university student.
Okay.
I know Dombury won't like that. It's a little too old for him. So we're going up to the KTV, and we get to the door, and I open the door, and I look inside, expecting there to see some other fine studious girls from the university, and I turn the corner, and on the couch are 3 other guys. And they aren't local guys. They're foreign guys. Whiter than me.
Wow, that's impressive.
Oh, wow.
And
that's pretty white.
And I saw it, and I was so I turned, because there was part of the room was behind me. So I figured, surely there must be hordes of women, the other direction. If there's 3 guys here, there must be at least 50 girls in the other. So I turn, and there's 2 other girls in the room.
Uh-huh.
So
it's not such a bad ratio.
It's not such a bad ratio, but then, as the night went on, several other guys, white guys, started showing up. So the ratio was really out of whack by the end of the night. There must have been at least 5 guys there, and the girl ratio did not change.
So there were 3 girls?
No, I think it was 4 girls total.
Okay.
And then there were maybe like 5 or 6 guys, including myself.
Okay.
And so, you know, I was really puzzled. So I talked to the guys a little bit, and I was like, oh, do you know the girl who brought me? I was like, oh, so you guys know her? And they're like, yeah, we're all friends with that girl. And I said, okay. So I went up to that girl. At one point, I pulled her off to the side, and I was like, so how do you know these guys? Do you know them from school or what? And she's like, Tinder. And she was really excited. She seemed really excited by this, and I was like, oh, I see. So. What about that guy over there, the other one who came in later? And she's like, oh, Tinder. I was like, oh, okay, I see. So then another guy, this is, you know, not all the guys had arrived yet. And so another one came into the room shortly after I had this discussion with her. And I said, oh, hey, you know, nice to meet you. And what about this guy? Where do you know him from? And she's like, Tinder. So I was the only guy in the room who she hadn't met off Tinder. Her entire social circle was just Tinder guys, and some girlfriends from university.
Right.
So it was very, very confusing. And then later I asked her, so what, you know, where do you usually, you know, you hang out with a lot of guys, like why do you like Tinder so much? She's like, it's so easy to meet people. Everyone's really they really love to meet up. I'm sure they would be.
So there you go. So you can, you know, start a social circle or get a new social circle from online dating, from Tinder, from Scout, from some places use OkCupid. There's Tag for if you're into Filipina domestic workers or Filipinos in the Philippines. There's Hello Talk, which is a language exchange app, but it doesn't really seem like there's too many people actually doing is that where you got your language exchanges from?
I've tried, but I just post on Facebook now. And
what happened when you tried Hello Talk?
I'm actually trying to get language exchanges when I do language exchanges. I don't expect to meet attractive women from
so is that
exchange.
Okay. Is it because the girls aren't attractive, or is it because when you actually try and set up a language exchange with them, they're like, no, I'm looking for a guy who wants to fuck me, not exchange languages? Because, you know, all of the guys in Korea who've been using Hello Talk just talk about how the girls just show up and there's no discussion of language exchange at all. And lots of day one, same day lays happening.
Yeah. I suppose that if they meet you, that's probably what they kind of want to happen, but mostly they don't meet you off that app.
Oh, really? Experience. Okay. You mean you have to run through a lot of numbers to get them to meet you?
Yeah, I would imagine. But I suppose it also depends on the country. So, you know, a place like Korea, I'm sure a lot of Korean guys probably haven't discovered that app yet, so they don't know what the deal is quite yet. So few enterprising young foreigners getting into that business.
Right. Now, one of the disadvantages of something like Hello Talk is there's not, you know, let's just say that many of the girls on there are making the rounds. So, you know, guys have been in the habit of checking with the other guys, the other, you know, their other friends if they've, you know, had relations with these girls, and oftentimes, you know, 2 or 3 other guys will raise their hand and say, well, I've been there. So that's one of the hazards of online dating. This is also the case in Thailand with Thai Friendly. You know, we have one guy that we know who apparently has done most every girl on there. So
I think that's the deal with most online kind of dating things. If you're with a group of guys who also do online dating, you should probably expect that, you know, you're gonna be Eskimo cousins with someone in your immediate vicinity.
So those are so you know, while we may be so there are some things that make online dating not great, but you know, one of the things that's good about it is that if you are new to dating, then online game is a pretty good way to start. You know, you get to have a lot of interactions with women, and they're quite anonymous. So you know, that's one good thing. when I first moved to Taipei, I opened up the Tinder, and I was working the Tinder. I don't know if I would say I was working it pretty hard, but I had about 5 Tinder dates. 5. Well, I met 5 girls off of Tinder in person. With one of them, I think I met her twice. I think there were 2 that I maybe met twice. And actually, I had my first Bin Laden experience because one of the girls is a Taiwanese Aborigine. And that's
she must have been quality if she was on the Bin Laden.
Well, I don't remember what happened. We walked by a Bin Laden place, and I guess she mentioned that it's like Aboriginal culture. Because I was asking her about Aboriginal culture. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Taiwan has like native non-Chinese Aborigines who've been living here until the Chinese came and moved them away from the fertile land, and
drove them into the mountains,
and they still have like they still have a pretty large presence, I guess you could say. You meet them pretty regularly, but they're not so obvious as not being Chinese at this point. But anyway, and so Bin Laden is one of their Bin Laden is in English it's normally called betel nut, and it's like a mild narcotic, I guess. And
it's like chewing tobacco, really.
Yeah, and it's used for
chewing tobacco.
Yeah. Anyway, people just like it. Like Mr. Wright likes it.
Yeah, he really liked it.
You were loving it. We don't know what you were talking about.
Right. That's why I love doing it all the time.
You just don't go and buy it anymore. That's the only reason. If I had it here, I'm pretty sure you'd be hitting the Bin Laden. Anyway. Let's just say that I'm pretty sure that if it was that Mr. Wright would be reaching for the Bin Laden on a regular basis if it was right here.
Seriously,
it's yours.
If you get a job driving a taxi, you can get paid to just chew Bin Laden, basically.
or if I get a job directing people into taxis.
Oh yeah, you
right.
could do that too. That's
all
true.
Night long.
So in
Bin Laden and smoke at the same time.
In Taipei, for whatever reason, it's very common for taxi drivers to chew betel nut, and in front of clubs they have like these whole like setup for people getting into taxis. I guess so that people, drunken people don't get hit or something. And those guys who are directing the whole setup are often have their entire mouth just red from Bin Laden juice. So there you go. Okay, so moving to a new place, and I guess that's kind of similar for you, right? You just moved here to Taipei, and you've been hitting the online, the Tinder, not as hard as you used to.
Not that hard. Like I don't really expect much from it. I just do it mostly to see what kind of girls are in that area.
I thought you've been doing it every day. You were when you first came here. You were doing it every day until you ran out of matches.
I did it for every day. I did it every day.
Until you ran out of matches. I mean, until you ran out of profiles.
We should specify that it's not because he wanted to really meet girls. It's because he wanted to play Tinder, right?
Yeah. I mostly just enjoyed playing the game Tinder. Like,
let's see how many matches I can get.
No,
well then you should like Pokemon Go too.
Thing, but no, it's more about just kind of refining my taste and like deciding like what I like and don't like. It's
from a picture.
Yeah. When I look at a picture, I can see like I don't like this girl, but why don't I like her? It's like okay, I don't really like this aspect about her, and it's like okay, I understand that better about myself. It's a good self-reflection.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But also like I very rarely manage to get the girls to meet. So
the ones that you actually want.
The ones I actually want.
Yeah,
but
you got some meets that I was present for.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I was away.
Yeah.
But there were some I.
Oh, that's right. We had them come over to the house party.
Yeah. But those are ones I wasn't really interested in.
It's okay, man. You should be honest.
Yeah, it's okay.
At the house party.
It's okay.
Hey, I mean, yeah, because you guys are just overflowing with the girls who came from your list.
Well, I'm just saying that, as you said, it's hard to get good girls off of Tinder.
Yeah.
So the good girls who came. Oh wait, there weren't any.
No, there was one.
Oh yeah, there was that one. I guess you had that one girl that was pretty good.
No. The one that knew our former landlord. A certain.
Oh, yeah, but that's not from. That's not from
online.
internet though.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm just.
It could be though. You,
Yeah,
just, you haven't found her yet.
Yeah.
I get through those profiles.
So in the other great reason, the other great reason to use online is if you just really want to get laid very easily. Now, once again, that really involves having low or no standards. But I mean, there was a guy here who doesn't have much or any game, and in 2 months he had sex with 18 different girls.
Yeah.
So, if you just want to get your numbers up, you want to expand your experience, if you want to practice how to run dates, then online game can be good. But don't expect to get on there and find something that you're really into. If you do, you consider it luck.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, well, we know some guys from Japan who have met their future wives off of Tinder.
there are a few current.
Or their current wives. Yeah.
Oh, that was Tinder.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It was. Did he close her on the first date? Or did he have to wine and dine her over in
I
several?
think maybe he wined and dined her over a period, but yeah. So maybe you'll meet your future wife.
All right, yeah.
More power to you.
In China, I think that these kind of apps are more. One of the things that is more common. It's more commonly done there because their messaging app WeChat, which is every country has their kind of preferred messaging app, and in China it's Tinder. Mostly because you can't use other messaging apps. But anyway, they have a find people nearby feature, and so people will go to a club and then they'll find someone nearby on WeChat, and then they'll just meet them right after. Yeah, this is done.
Well, why?
Because people.
Wait, why?
Okay,
No,
now
but
this is why.
Girls do this?
Okay, so I think one of the reasons specifically for why this is common in China is because in China there's a really high percentage of people at tables, higher than Taipei.
So girls will be looking for guys who have a table.
No. Girls are sitting at the table with guys they don't want to have sex with, I think is what's happening. So you get invited to a table by some guy who's buying all the drinks and everything, but they don't really like this guy.
They want to meet other guys.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Sex at dawn.
So there is the which is a great book that I recommend you read. And yeah, so there is WeChat look nearby feature, and then there's the what's the other app that they have? Tan, which is Tinder for China because you can't use Tinder in China. So there you go. So there's a few points about online dating. Now, why would you want to do? Why would you not want to do online dating? Okay, well, there are lots of reasons, and pretty much I don't do online dating pretty much at all. I've done it in very small. Basically, what's happened when I've done online dating is I've tried it for a couple of weeks, and I'm like, wow, this is terrible. I could just go outside and do way better. So that's me, but as I pointed out, it's good for beginners. I've been doing a cold approach for a long time. Cold approach is when you approach girls who you don't know. Like just today, I was out with Mick and McConnell getting lunch, and there was this girl in a mini skirt and her midriff out, and she was working it, and and I approached her. And for a lot of guys, that's kind of far out of their reality, and it's something that I think you should do. And we're going to talk about that. Unless you have any other comments about online dating.
None.
I think that online dating can have its place, but it should always take a second place to cold approach. Approaching people, always interacting with people for the first time in real life, I think trumps any kind of digital format. But if for some reason you're unable to approach women in your environment, or you're unable to find women that you like in your environment, then I guess online could have a place. But I mean, if you're relying on that solely for your social kind of environment, I don't think it's that ideal.
So let's talk about cold approach. Let's first talk about where you can do cold approach, right? Because I think for a lot of guys who are new to this, they don't even really think of this as being a possibility of something that you can do. So what are your favorite cold approach environments, McConnell?
Street, just hanging out on the street, waiting in like a high traffic area. Those are really good. Bookstores are really good.
Bookstores. Yeah,
Coffee
there's
shops.
a bookstore here in Taipei that, several of the guys have met girls there and taken them home on the same day and closed them.
You'd be surprised how many people are there at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like nothing to do in this fucking city. Outside the club nights.
Oh, okay.
Outside of club nights, there's nothing really to do.
You could be at home working.
I'm
Exactly.
not-
That's exactly. See?
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Be
I
working
guess
on
so.
your new app idea.
I guess I gotta start playing those 2 a.m. Work hours.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
actually
Work
very
for Mark
nice.
Zuckerberg, and he has a nice Asian girl now.
Yeah, that's true. A bouncing
That's
baby.
Yeah.
Okay, just for those of you who aren't here, you may not know, but we've been living in Asia for a while, and we think Mark Zuckerberg's wife is total trash. It doesn't mean she's not a nice woman. I guess she's very well educated,
It's
but
the inside that counts, man.
okay. But when it comes to her physical features, it's a disaster.
Well,
Absolute
she's
disaster.
She's thin. On
Okay.
that 7.
Yeah, well, that's only a rule in America. It does not apply here.
Are they not in America? No?
Well, they are, but if you're Mark
Hey,
Zuckerberg,
hey.
you don't have to fucking be in America, right? I mean, really. You could just source women from all over the planet.
The largest database of people.
That's right. He literally could talk to like any woman who is any woman who has enough, who comes from a social class high enough to be able to afford a computer. He can talk to her. And that's what he got.
Which just leads you to know just how high quality she must really be.
Anyway, maybe he's secretly into like scatting or something, and she's like the only Asian girl that would go along with him.
I did really
I'll
like.
scat for you, Mark.
I did really like in the Social Network how they cast Asian girls in the roles of the girls that they had sex with.
Yeah,
After they made Facebook. Yeah.
Actually,
That was a nice touch.
when I first saw his wife, I was with Love GTM, and we were in Boracay, and I don't know if you guys have been to Boracay, but it's the quality of the women there is pretty low, except for the Korean tourists, and so there's all these foreign guys there with these really trash Asian girls. So we just started saying, "Oh, look at that guy! He's Zuckerberging it hard." It's just our term. So there you go. Go forth and promulgate the Zuckerberg.
But yeah, I do like coffee shops. Coffee shops are great.
Oh, yeah. I
Just
mean,
girls who are there by themselves and bored out of their minds, nothing to do.
Yeah.
coffee shops,
Perfect
definitely a good
environment.
call. I've met more than a few top shelf girls at coffee shops, especially in Korea, where it's just so many girls at coffee shops all the time. Japan is also quite good, although a little bit slow. And
It depends. It's slow if you don't go to Starbucks.
right, yeah, that's true. And you know, a little bit. They don't have much coffee shop action in mainland, unfortunately, and in Hong Kong. Chinese people aren't really into the coffee thing.
Well, I mean, here
But there's a lot.
There's
a lot of cafes in Taipei.
There is a lot of cafes,
Yeah.
but it just seems like at any given time they're like half empty.
That's true. But most places are half empty in Taiwan.
But
Well, except Starbucks, which is always full.
No,
all
that's
the
true.
time.
That's true. Yeah.
Just not with the kind of girls like I want to talk to. Where are they going?
apparently they don't go to cafes. But in general, there seems to be like a Chinese cultural thing where they don't really do cafes because Singapore, Hong Kong, mainland. I mean, there just isn't really like this cafe culture like there is in Japan and Korea and I guess in America. I don't know.
Well, I guess people go to cafes in America. Yeah, people go to cafes in America just to do random shit. Whereas here, it just seems like they don't do that at all.
Actually, you know, one of the cafes that we haven't actually been to that might... I've been to once. I went there with HB South Africa. And we went to this cafe that's really supposed to be really nice. And not really nice. It's supposed to be really cool, trendy, hipster.
It's a cool place.
Yeah. So we went there, but she didn't like it because it's too hipster.
It was too cool.
I don't... You know, I think maybe she wanted something a little bit more elegant. But, you know.
More fitting in with
You
her
know, I would have
South
taken her
African taste.
to elsewhere if she was available at the times when it's open, but, you know.
Maybe someplace still under apartheid.
So you know, for me, I've always been a big fan of cafe, like Mr. Wright was saying, mostly because you can run really lazy game there. You know, you could just sit there and read a book or watch videos on your iPad or whatever, and then girls just come and sit right next to you. Or they walk right past you, and you could just, you know, wave at them or whatever, and they're quite, you know, they're not doing anything. So
You can just wave them over and tell them to sit next to you.
yeah,
It's like, they might do it.
yeah. Actually, I've had that on more, you know, several occasions. I've gotten girls to it. So yeah, cafes. I'm also a big fan of night game, more so than most people I know. Maybe, I guess not Romeo. He seems to be. I'm not actually sure. He gets mixed reviews. I don't know. I think there's two kinds of night game guys. There's guys who go out to, you know, and just go out and they just want to like meet girls. That would be me. And there's other guys who that's their plan, but then they just end up getting sloppy drunk and just taking home whatever they can find.
Or both.
or both. Wait, they. So
guys who do both.
yeah, I guess they do both. Yeah. So you know, there is.
Be careful what you wish for.
Be careful. Yeah, be careful. Yeah, be careful what you wish for, because you might get something hideous instead. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of club game. I know a lot of guys don't like to do club game, and let's actually split club game, because there's you know, there's more like bar lounge game, which is I think quite different. It's
That's
almost
basically like day game.
yeah.
Well, I say actually,
It's like cafe game at night.
a lot of having been to a few clubs in America, I would say, you know, clubs in America often can resemble kind of lounge cafe type places, depending on the club. If it's large enough, you know, they'll have like a separate dance floor area that's separate from like a seated area that's more of a lounge that people can actually go around and mingle.
Oh, okay. All right, so yeah, so it kind of has like a bar area, and then it has a dance area.
Whereas in Asia, if it's a club, the bar is pretty much on the dance floor, and it's just bursting through your eardrums at all times.
Yeah. So if you do like bar, you know, once again, like, you know, it's much slower and people sort of go there to mingle more, and you know, so it can be a lot easier to approach girls and get into conversations there. So you know, in Taipei, there's the infamous Brass Monkey. There's Barcode. There's Frank. There's Halo, which is kind of a mixture. This is kind of like because they have the outside balcony. And in Japan, there's places like, or in Osaka, there's like Cinquecento. for example, or what are some of the other bars? Oh, there's the Hub, of course.
Oh, in Japan.
Yeah, and
The
in
Hub.
Japan there's the Hub. That's all Japan-wide, really. And
Yeah, probably the Hub is one of the better bars in Japan because it's the one that Japanese people actually go to.
right, because they know it because it's a Japanese company that's really big, so
Yeah.
they know it. And then in Tokyo there's in Roppongi there's like R2, and there's why am I blanking?
In Seoul, you can go to
There's
Hobart
Rigoletto. Yeah, that's true.
before they banned all foreigners.
Yeah, you could go to Hobart before, but now you can't. They don't want foreigners to know about the hose in the bar, so they don't allow you to go. But in Korea there's Glam and Prost in Itaewon, and Thursday Party in Hongdae and in Itaewon. So in any of the major cities, there are always these kind of in Hong Kong, there's Lily and Bloom. And or is it Lily? Is Bloom another? Oh yeah, Lily and Bloom. Wait, is that two different places? Anyway, there's a place either called Lily or Bloom or both, or there's two different places. And then there's Azure on the first floor. It's kind of a mixture also, where they've got like a floor that's a bar, and then they've got like an outside balcony, and then they've got kind of a dance area. So Hong Kong has a lot of bar type of environments on the street in Long Kwai Fong, and Singapore and Clarke Quay. There's lots of bar area types where it's much easier to approach. Now I prefer clubs, like proper clubs, and the reason I prefer proper clubs is because they have better girls and more of them. That's all there is to it.
The girls look much better in the clubs.
They are much better. They're usually younger, for starters.
Well, you can meet young girls in cafe, but they.
No, I'm talking about as compared to bars.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh.
As compared to bars.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that. We could talk about, maybe night game versus day game sort of another time, but I'm just talking about, bar versus. So I really prefer going to clubs because there's more girls who are younger and better looking, period. I don't think anyone can argue with that. I mean, unless you prefer more mature women, which, if you do, we have Mr. Balls Deep, who prefers mature women, so he's not maybe a big fan of clubs.
Go down to Cougarville.
Yeah, so so for me, I'm really into clubs, but it is definitely one of the harder environments to approach. So if you don't go there very often, or if you're out of practice, it definitely is a lot harder, I think, to once you're in the interaction.
Would you say it's harder than night game on the street?
Oh, well, okay, so street night game, how difficult that is really varies from environment to environment. But I would say that in a lot of cases, street night game can be the most difficult. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, great. So let's talk about, how to, get into cold approach if you haven't done it, right? Because I think for a lot of people, the idea of doing it is like, they just think, well, how am I going to, go and talk to this person and it turn into anything? It's very hard for them to understand that. But let's first just talk about just doing that initial approach. I think there are pretty much two ways to think about it. And one is taken from sort of a Japanese philosophy of quality control, and the other is taken from a book called The Flinch, which is a free book, so you can go and find that. Actually, we'll have a link below so you can go and grab that book because it's quite worth reading. And so let's talk about The Flinch first, I think, because that's sort of easier. Have you guys read The Flinch?
I haven't read
I
it.
have not.
Okay, but are you familiar with the book?
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, The Flinch is basically the premise of the book is that there are things that we may want to do them, but we feel this inner hesitation to doing it. And we hesitate even though really the consequences of doing it aren't really a big deal. So one of the exercises in that book is they tell you to like drop a mug on the floor, so and just to break it, just drop it and just break it. And he's talking about getting over that feeling where you don't want to let that mug go because you're like, no, I shouldn't be doing this, it's gonna break. And being able to push through that, what they call that flinch, that automatic flinch reaction that you have. Another example is a favorite of Vision, which is and Mr. Wright is also had some experience with this.
Which is it? Oh, the cold showers. Oh yeah, I know all about those. Kind of hard to do here in Taipei since there's no cold water in summer. But
I think it's cold for me. I run the hot water when I'm in there. You too?
Yeah, of course.
well, I guess it runs out of cold water if you run it for more than a minute because it becomes hot.
Okay, well, we'll talk about the home plumbing situation later.
But anyways,
let's stick
cold
with
showers are basically this idea that you should take, instead of a hot shower, you should just take a cold shower. And maybe when you start out, you can just throw in some hot water in the middle, but you should always start and end the shower with cold water. And eventually, you just work up to completely doing cold showers. And there's studies showing, the various health benefits. I think the biggest benefit to doing it is probably the mental aspect of just, you just
overcoming the flinch.
Yeah, exactly. You just start doing something that you don't want to do, but just get it over with. And after you start it,
sometimes you gotta man up.
Man up.
Anyway, just keep going.
Take a cold shower. and I don't know, what was I saying now?
You were saying that the major benefit is...
Yeah, the major benefit is just the mental aspect of just doing something you don't really want to do, but once you start, it's really not that bad, and you feel much better throughout the day, especially, in the Taipei summer. It gets so friggin' hot here that having a cold shower really helps take it down a notch.
Right, but you're not really supposed to take a cold shower under those circumstances. You're supposed to take a cold shower when it's cold.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to take cold shower all the time, basically.
Oh.
Like whenever you just only take cold showers. There's no such thing as hot water.
Right. So.
But
so you feel that
it's better when it's summer.
So you feel that it really helps, with your mental fortitude.
Yeah, because even in the morning, when it's still a little bit colder, or if you have a girl over and she's been running the air conditioning and you're not at all hot, it can be a bit more difficult, but still, it still helps a lot to feel like I don't really want to do this, but I'll do it anyway because reasons.
Because reasons. Right, so that's the flinch concept where you basically just push yourself to do this thing that you don't want to do, and it just kind of is painful and kind of unpleasant, but you just make yourself do it. You just, it's like diving into the deep end of the pool. That's the flinch approach where you just do it. And for some people, that approach works really well. In the old days, there was always the concept of the 3-second rule, which is that if you see a girl, you should approach her within 3 seconds. And that idea is really following on the pattern of the flinch. And, I think that works for some people. I'm personally not a big fan of that approach for cold approach, but but for some people, that's what works best. How about for you?
I think it really depends on my mood, and both methods work really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's switch over to talk about the other method.
Well, actually, before we move on, I have a question
Sure.
that I'd like to ask you that I'm sure a lot of people, especially people who may be in a Western background, might have, and that's this idea that, you're on the street and everyone, especially girls, especially attractive girls, just want to be left alone. They don't want to be bothered. They don't want some random strange guy coming up and saying things that make them feel uncomfortable at any given time. So the guy who thinks like that, what would you say to him to get over this kind of hesitation of bothering this attractive person, this girl who just in their mind wants to be left alone?
So I think that there's two parts to it, which is one, that if you can figure out that you are actually offering her something by approaching her, or potentially offering her something by approaching her, then that would change the dynamic. So, we could use the example of G-Dragon. Now, probably nobody, maybe if you're listening to this, you probably don't know who G-Dragon is. But he's one of the most famous pop stars in Korea, like for the past, 5 years or something, or maybe more. And in Korea, he's, if he probably can't walk down the street. But if he was in New York, for example, then he probably could walk down the street. Well, there's Korean tourists there, but okay. In a place with no Korean tourists, he probably, could walk down the street. No one's going to know who he is. Now, if he approached an attractive American girl, probably she would blow him off. He's just some Asian dude. But she would be missing out on an opportunity to meet a guy who has a lot going for him, and therefore he could have a lot to offer her. So, you have to think of it from that perspective, that you have something to offer and the girl is not aware of that. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's the first part. The second part is, like anything, it's about packaging that interaction in a way that makes her not feel uncomfortable, makes it so that the interaction can be enjoyable. And I think that those are the two key parts to getting over that mindset. As a great, for me, oftentimes, even if I don't really feel like approaching, if I have something to say that I think is really good, then, when I say really good, I mean like it'll be fun for us. Then in those situation, I feel a lot more comfortable approaching. And, even if I'm not interested in a girl. And if I am interested, even better. So, I think that's probably one of the best ways to deal with that. Do you have any comment?
Agreed.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's pretty good. So
it's very hard. If you think that you don't have much going for you, then yeah, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, so basically a guy who, if there's a guy who thinks that doesn't really have that much to offer a girl. I mean, everyone has something to offer someone.
Yeah.
You just have to figure out what it is that you have to offer and just present it in the best way possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, great. So
The other method,
right? The kaizen method. So I don't know. Do you want to talk about kaizen first and what it is?
I'm probably not going to get it exactly right as it applies to pickup, but
You could just talk about the idea, the concept originally.
So the concept of kaizen is this Japanese management philosophy started by Toyota, the former CEO of Toyota, I guess. And the idea of kaizen is that if you make enough small changes, very, very small changes in the right direction, then eventually all of those small changes will amount to really, really big wins and big successes down the line. But the attractive thing about kaizen is that the work of implementing small changes is very small. So you don't actually have to work that hard to make all of these continuous changes. You just have to be very consistent with it and allow the changes to gradually accumulate into something big. So the way that it was done in Toyota, for example, is they might have a assembly line, and the assembly line is not producing cars or whatever fast enough, or maybe there's some quality control problem or something with the assembly line. So instead of looking at it from the top down and like assigning, we're going to change this and this and make all these changes and see how it works. The other approach is to look at it and say, okay, what's the smallest thing we can do to start getting better results? Maybe like put one more person on the assembly line, or maybe use a different material at one stage to improve the quality or something like that. Something really small, and then gradually the overall process will start to improve if you change enough small things. And the thing about making small changes is that you don't have to worry about the small change not working, because it's so small that changing it back is really easy. So the concept can kind of be summarized by make a lot of small steps towards your overall goal, and because you're making such small steps, you don't have to worry about them. it's not a big deal if things don't go well, and basically just stick with it and be consistent so that eventually it will all amount to bigger bigger successes down the line.
Cool. Now I think that there's this book called The Slight Edge, and I think The Slight Edge pretty much talks about the same concept but in a different way. So in The Slight Edge, they talk about how if you want to start going jogging every morning, then what you should do is you should leave your jogging shoes right next to the bed so that when you get out of bed, the jogging shoes are there. Or they say you should decide to floss. If you want to get into the habit of flossing, you should decide to floss one tooth. And if you just you go, well, that's a small thing, and then it cascades. Now in pickup, it's almost exactly the same. In meeting girls, it's almost exactly the same. Essentially, you look at the smallest thing that you can possibly do to move towards that goal. So, for example, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to go out and meet 5 girls today, maybe what you do is you just say you're just going to go out and look at girls, right? Very easy to do and pretty enjoyable. Or maybe you're going to play Pokemon Go and you're going to go around and look at girls while you play Pokemon Go. You're just going to get out in an environment where there will be girls, and that would be your first step. And usually by being in that environment, you start to think about what it would be like to be successful with girls or to approach girls or whatever. So then it's oh, you want to maybe talk to one. Well, you could start with, for example, making some small talk with an employee at a store, or when you order your coffee, you could say something to her at the cafe or something like that. Something really, really super easy. Not super easy necessarily, but super simple. And it could be, you're just going to say one thing to her, which is you might just say, oh, I like your hair. And that's it. It's so, very simple. And so you just keep on adding these really small baby steps in. Maybe then the next thing is that, you will decide that anytime someone sits next to you at a cafe, you're going to say one thing to them. That might be the next thing. You might say to them, oh, do you know a good restaurant around here? And then they would give you a restaurant recommendation. You'd say, thank you very much, and that would be the end. And then maybe after you're comfortable doing that very regularly, then the next step would be to do that plus say one other thing. And so you gradually increase the amount of interaction you're having at very small stages. Especially because when you do something like initiate an interaction with a stranger, some percentage of them will continue the interaction with you. So you end up having to interact with a person beyond what you originally planned. And so that's kind of what I call the kaizen method of dealing with of cold approach, which is just to take very, very small steps. I remember one of the guys back in the day. He lived in Nagoya, and he was there alone. He didn't have anybody to go out with, and so that made him feel very uncomfortable when we go to the club. And he didn't go. And then one day, I remember he went in front of the club, and he just was in front of the club for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then he went home. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even go in." And I said, "No, that's great. I mean, you went in front of the club. That's good. That's a good start. Next time maybe you go in, or maybe next time you stand in front for longer." And then at that point, maybe the next step is you just go in and you just go to check it out. And maybe the next step is you meet some of the staff. And, so you can break it down into small enough steps that each one of them is not that daunting. And so I think that that's the other really effective approach to approaching. Yeah. Okay, great. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, just put it in the comment box below. We'll, as usual, have our mentioned resources, including the Slight Edge and the Flinch, and maybe links to some of these online dating apps, I guess, or whatever. And
I'm sure most people know them already.
Are you sure?
Well, some of them.
They'll know Tinder for
yeah,
sure, but they may not know, Hello Talk.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Anyway, we'll see. We might have some. If not, you can message us and I'll send them to you because maybe they're maybe you need them, but we think you don't. So there you go. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good time.
And next time, I guess maybe we'll talk about maybe night game versus day game or something like that.
Yeah.
Since I think we could have a pretty lively debate about that.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.